we need to have a talk.
A talk?
Look,
It's going to be like when my dad sat me down outside the drive-in. We got there 3 hours early. I was like, what's going on? And it proceeded to be a really uncomfortable situation before we saw Back to School starring Rodney Dangerfield.
I don't think it's going to be that uncomfortable of a conversation. Okay. Here's the thing. You don't have to root for the Zags in tonight's game, but you should be, instead of rooting for Baylor, you should be rooting for both teams to have fun. Because you can't root for Baylor, Danny. You can't root for Baylor. This is coming from somebody who lived in Texas for almost a decade. You just can't. I'm sorry. They are not a likable school, and because they are not a likable school, I am not allowing you to root for them.
They're from Houston, right?
Nope, they are in Waco.
Waco.
Mm-hmm.
Waco is, I know that as an abandoned outpost. Like, there's not much going on there, right?
Waco is known for all of the crazy things that have taken place there, and that Baylor is there as well. Yes.
It's West Texas?
It's like in the middle of northern Texas, essentially. So
okay.
Towards western Texas, but yeah.
What makes Baylor specifically dislikable?
My first thing. They're very cocky, Baylor people, about where they went. It's a good school. It's not a great school, but they will never, ever, ever tell you that. That is a tad hypocritical coming from me and all the talking I do about Syracuse University. But there is a lot of this that goes on with Baylor people. And there's this sense that because it's a school that is a Baptist school, that the way that they go about it, it's not just that they are better than you, smarter than you. It's like they're better people than you, too. There's this air that they carry themselves.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Yeah.
I definitely as a product of both a public high school and a public university, I definitely tend to rebel against the elitist college attitudes.
Right. So there's a little bit of that going on with them. And then I just have a hard time liking them, period, because of all the stuff that has happened there. Baylor football, yes, that's not entirely connected at all to the basketball program in any way, shape, or form. But the people at the top of Baylor just looked the other way while that football team was winning with all of these sexual assault allegations that took place there. And then I go a little bit further back to a unbelievably strange era with Dave Bliss running their basketball program.
But that stuff has nothing to do with the coach and the players that are there right now, right?
Same colors, same institution.
But it's different. I do draw the line at teams. Teams are different, right? You can't. You're not rooting for an institution or a school because by that same token, I mean it's not like Catholic. And look, my family has paid tons and tons of dollars into Jesuit institutions. I had an uncle who was a priest. I was raised in the Catholic Church, but I'm not sure in the overall big picture of things if the moral high ground is something that Catholic institutions want to stake out.
That's fair. I mean, and I'm trying not to look at it from that perspective. I'm just saying you got two just unbelievably horrible things that have taken place at both of these schools over the past 20 years. And I look at the uniform, I look at the logo, and it's all representative of the same thing, even if there aren't any people that are still there. It's sort of like, how do you feel about Penn State? I can't stand Penn State. And it's mainly because their fans are nut jobs. But the other part of it is I look at that helmet, I look at that logo, and I just think about everyone that allowed what was taking place with Sandusky to happen there. And I just... And then afterwards, all the anger that they had all these things taken from them when, I mean, it was just absolutely heinous what took place. So I look at the school, Danny, and it's unfair, but I will always dislike that school because of those incidents.
I agree with that about Penn State, but mostly what my objections to Penn State fans are is that they feel that they were victimized. With Baylor fans, and maybe this is just I don't know enough of them, I thought there was a general consensus that, yeah, what happened here was really, really not just skeevy, but you can't have that happen. Everybody has to be gone. Like all the AD, even the president's gone, right? It was Kenneth Starr that was the president of the school. Like all of those people were, nobody felt that Baylor was unfairly targeted in those investigations, right? Because that's my main objection to Penn State fans is that they continue to feel that in some way people didn't really understand the nuances and that Joe Paterno was the victim of a witch hunt, which I firmly think is absolutely incorrect. And not only that, but that's completely oblivious to the deeper lessons that should have been learned.
Right. And so Baylor is different from that perspective, but man, this is a program that was cool with Dave Bliss for a while. I mean, Dave Bliss, he said that Patrick Dennehy, the player who died, like paid his tuition by being a drug dealer after the fact. Like, just how messed up is that? And it's, yes, looking at one person and painting with a broad brush the institution, but you can't root for Baylor, man. Just root for both teams to have fun. Root for a good match.
Here's my issue with Gonzaga. Washington was a rival, saw itself as a rival, and in the Brandon Roy era was a program that was at the very least competitive, and you could even make an argument that Washington might have been the program on the rise. They lost the rivalry. Like Lorenzo Romar stopped playing Gonzaga, which I thought was kind of lame, but I kind of liked that Romar just didn't like Mark Few. Like, for whatever reason, developed a blood grudge against Few and just wasn't even going to play them anymore. My school's been vanquished. Like, Gonzaga doesn't even look at Washington as they're not a rival. They're not a threat at all. They don't recruit any of the same kids, whereas before, like, Josh Heitfeld was a major part of, like, if I go and root for them now, it's like tantamount to just rolling over on my back as a dog and saying, like, oh, here's my belly. Here's my belly. So it's a little bit of residual bitterness. It's a little bit of residual bitterness, and then it's a lot of flat-out denial, jealousy of you can't. If I were to root for Gonzaga now, it would be tantamount to just like complete. I would feel like I was betraying because I would feel like I was jumping on the bandwagon because my program couldn't keep up.
I 100% support your reasoning on this. Like, I'm totally fine with you not rooting for the Zags.
Just can't root for Baylor.
You just can't root for Baylor. Yeah, you just can't root for Baylor. And look, I like the Zags. I'm a big fan of all the East Side things, Wazoo and the Zags. Those are my two. Danny, he and his, elitist Husky ways. This is how he rolls.
That's the other thing. Somebody brought that up. How is the public university elitist?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Like, in general, I'll cop to being the elitist when it comes to Cougs, but I will not be called elitist by Gonzaga fans. I will not be called an elitist by Gonzaga fans.